Hello, and welcome to the new installment of Bean Steamers. We're glad you could make it today. If you're a subscriber, you're the first one on your block to get the new installment. That's always a good thing. So, as promised last week, we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about weather reporters. But before we do that, I'd like you to say hello to Harold the baby Bigfoot and Sammy the hippopotamus up there, two guys that are indispensable in the running of this YouTube channel. So we're going to talk about weather reporters today. Where else can you be virtually 100% of the time wrong and still stay employed? Well, let's look at phony scenario one first. You're at your desk at the CDC headquarters, feeling pretty good about the report that you just filed, thinking that you may be able to get some time off due to the grueling schedule that you've kept for the previous 2 months that you are certain will wipe out the next pandemic that is brewing at the bottom of the world. Just then, your supervisor barges in your office, speaking in a tone that only he can speak in, half talking, half screaming. Jenkins, he says, are you aware of the fact that you misidentified carbon monoxide as oxygen in your report on that Antarctica pandemic? What kind of numbskull would do that? Thousands of people are going to die because of that mistake. Hey, boss, you say rather sheepishly. My bad. I'll try to see that it doesn't happen again. No guarantees, though. Okay, Jenkins. Your boss has calmed down a bit now due to your reassuring reply. We all make mistakes. Just do the best that you can, even if that's not very good, and take the rest of the day off. You earned it. Phony scenario number two. You're in deep concentration in the air traffic control tower at Los Angeles International Airport. You've been an air traffic controller for almost 3 days now, and you've got this job down cold. Just then, your boss bursts into your cubicle, shouting only as he can, half talking, half screaming. Jenkins! I really like that name for someone who's getting hollered at. Jenkins, you moron. You've got a 747 landing on 16 right and an Airbus taking off the other end. They're going to collide in about 15 seconds. Do something, you idiot. You instruct the Airbus to abort the takeoff and turn right off the runway, hopelessly getting the huge plane stuck in a field. Jenkins, you imbecile. Hundreds of lives were almost lost. Hasn't 22 hours on the job taught you anything? Hey, boss, you reply. Just one of those bonehead mistakes. I'll try to see that it doesn't happen anymore for the rest of the day. Okay, Jenkins, your boss says, don't beat yourself up too bad. It could happen to anyone. Take the rest of the day off. You earned it. Well, needless to say, these two previous fake scenarios will never happen. In fact, it's safe to say that in every profession on the planet, if you make enough mistakes, and they don't even have to be serious ones, your employment with whatever company you work for will be over. El terminato. That is, all but one. Weather reporting on television, radio. Doesn't make any difference where. You can be virtually dead wrong all the time and get a pat on the back for a job well done and still get a paycheck with an annual raise tossed in, maybe even a sizable bonus for your hard work. Talk to anyone, and that's a literal statement. Well, any adult, and they will tell you a weather horror story that they were personally a part of. A horror story of how the plans that they had were ruined, whether it was for a weekend or a whole vacation, or maybe just for an afternoon and you're planning to work in the yard. The weather report said it was going to be a perfect day. So out you went and you set up everything that you needed for your hard day of yard work. And 15 minutes after you started, the rain started coming down. It's maddening. Well, actually, it's beyond maddening. It makes you wonder what kind of school trains people in this profession. Probably one where there are no textbooks, no classes, just a graduation ceremony in a few years with kudos and a diploma for studies in your chosen field of advanced education. About the only other job that has the same set of circumstances are stockbrokers. Why haven't people realized yet that the stock price of a company isn't based on what it did or didn't do financially? It's based on what some broker thought it was going to do. And a lot of the time, he ain't right. Enough of that. One thing that the common folk, like you and me, haven't really noticed about these weather people is that when inclement weather is upon us, they're always so excited. They talk 100 miles an hour and can barely catch their breath. One national network morning weather person is like that, talking so fast and loud that you can't understand hardly a word he says, running from screen to screen in a sprint, generally making a fool of himself. You can't hardly stand to watch him, but it is good for a laugh, as long as a severe storm isn't in your city, I suppose. Now, what network is this guy on, you ask? Well, there are three major networks. One begins with a C, one begins with an A, and this is the other one. Well, another example of this situation that happened in Southwest Ohio a few years back on the local NBC affiliate will actually illustrate this pretty good. It really steams people that when severe weather is upon us, local news will cut into any programming, no matter what the story. It doesn't matter if world peace has been attained or if aliens have landed an intergalactic spacecraft on the front land of the White House. They'll cut in, they'll cover the same information 20 times before they return you to regular programming 2 hours later. Now, only a few years ago, this happened in Southwest Ohio. One of the weather reporters was on camera in front of the weather map talking 200 miles an hour, and because of the high speed talking, she was barely able to breathe. All of the rest of the weather department at this television station was off camera hollering at her to bring up a different screen that would show any number of things that looked like the same situation in a different light. Valerie, they would shout out from somewhere in the studio off camera. Oh, and by the way, that's her real name. We're not changing names here to protect the innocent. Valerie was her real name. Somebody told me she moved to California, but they would shout, Valerie, bring up the wind gauge map. Well, dear Valerie dutifully did this and proceeded to launch into a long explanation of what this map meant. Before she could get 2 or 3 sentences out, someone else would shout out, Valerie, bring up the directional drift pattern graphic of the storm's predicted path. Well, once again, sweet Valerie did as she was told, and once again launched into a tirade about what this map meant. Folks, she'd say, what we see here coming in from the west is a PDF, which is going to cause, and somebody shouted, Valerie, a faceless voice from somewhere in the room. The viewers don't know what a PDS is. Valerie, weather person extraordinaire, stopped dead in her tracks and faced the camera straight on, placing her hands on her hips and firmly saying in the most educated voice she could, a PDS, a pretty dangerous situation. Now, shortly after that, the power went off, and mercifully, no one could hear them anymore. This type of overreaction is so typical. Thankfully, the storm ended the broadcast for us, and peace was attained with the storm brewing outside. By the way, the worst part of it bypassed us, and once again, beautiful Plastic Fork Ranch, my house, was saved from any damage. Now, as another example of that, several years ago, I was traveling on Interstate 80 West, and I had stopped for the night in a little town called Johnson City, Iowa. and the weather outside looked really bad. Checked into a hotel, went to my room, turned on the TV to see what kind of coverage another city did if they were going to talk 200 miles an hour and be madly pointing at things that nobody understood. And this guy was on camera and he said, folks, if you live about a mile east of Johnson City, Iowa, don't be watching me on TV. Go into the basement of your house. There's a tornado coming your way. Go into the basement right now. Turn off the TV and go into the basement. And that was it. That's all he said. And this tornado went about 2 or 3 miles east of where I was at the time. But he was so calm and he just told the people, don't watch me. Go get to safety. And that's exactly what they should do on these other channels as well. Well, this brings us to another aspect, another facet of weather prediction, and that is the weather model. Now, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, this is what various national or continental weather services will concoct to let the viewing or listening populace know which way this storm is going to travel, or more accurately, which way they think it's going to travel. These models are very big during hurricane season. It's also important to know that the different models never agree. Sometimes they're even radically different. However, if you're familiar with these weather models, did you ever notice that no matter how many models they have, the European model is always the most accurate? Time for another illustration. I had a truck once that for some reason was very bad on fuel pumps. This was a long time ago when a fuel pump was mounted on the side of the engine block. Now they're mounted on the gas tank, or some of them are even in the gas tank. A great idea that some brainiac auto engineer figured out how to drive the cost of fuel pump replacement from less than $20, a task that any shade tree mechanic could perform, to up to $400 or more, because it now has to be done by a certified mechanic who has to drop an empty fuel tank to install the fuel pump. This used to be a 20-minute job. Now we're talking hours. Anyway, I had this truck that was, for some reason no one could ever explain to me, bad on fuel pumps. After the fuel pump went out on me several times, leaving me stranded and in need of a tow truck, I began to carry a spare fuel pump, along with a tube of gasket sealer and the tools I needed to change it. A container of hand cleaner, all pumped together in the back of the driver's seat in this truck. When the pump would go out, I would just pull off to the side of the road or go into a parking lot and change it. In 20 minutes, I was back on the road, no worse for the wear. I would then go straight to an auto parts store and purchase another fuel pump, tossing it in back of the seat as I continued to my destination. Here's the point. When the truck quit running, I didn't stand on the side of the road with the hood up, looking at the engine, scratching my head, saying, now, what in the wide world of sports could be wrong with my truck? Was it a fuel line? When was the last time I put gas in the tank? Was the carburetor clogged with a dead chipmunk? Did I get my 10,000-mile ampere checkup at the local auto repair shop, a service that my friendly mechanic says I must have a steal at $79.95? No, I don't think about any of that. I roll up my sleeves, I get the pump, tools, and hand cleaner out from in back of the seat and go to work. In 20 minutes, I was on the nation's highways again in search of an auto parts store on the way to my destination. So with this illustration in mind, I now submit that looking at a various weather models available is really a waste of time when the European model is the most accurate. Why do these weather people always tossing all these other models? It seems as though everyone has to get their 2 cents in. Who knows what all these other models are anyway? There's probably an Icelandic model, a Korean model, and who knows what else. What would you call a weather model from Liechtenstein? Liechtensteinic? I don't know. The only model I want to see on that big map that no one knows where anything is and what it means is the European model. I want to be able to at least put my faith in something that has proven its worthiness to a pretty reasonable degree. Just like I went straight to the back of the seat for the remedy that I knew what was wrong with my truck and didn't waste my time with anything else, weather people should just post the European model of where the storm is going and go on and not waste time for all these other loser models. Then again, if these people are going to take 2 hours to say something 20 times, I guess they better fill the time with as much as they can before returning us to our regular programming. To see the aliens from the planet Mongo being interviewed on the White House front lawn alongside their flying saucer, an interview that we missed most of due to the weather people cutting in. Maybe we can talk to these little aliens and get them to feed us with their weather service. If they have the technology to travel across trillions of miles of countless galaxies at a speed greater than light, I figure they should have a pretty accurate way of predicting the weather. I don't know about you, but I'd be willing to let them control our planet unconditionally as long as I got an accurate weather forecast every day. Seems like a fair trade, doesn't it? But I guess until then, we'll just have to put up with it the way that it is. Well, that's my commentary on weather reporters. I'd like you to return next week, and I believe we're going to discuss traffic patterns, if I'm not mistaken. Once again, this is the part of the broadcast where I shamelessly ask you to subscribe, ring the little bell for notifications and everything, and you can be the first one in your neighborhood to get the brand new installment of Bean Steamers. Certainly, you're looking forward to it every week. I can only imagine. But until then, I'd like to thank you for joining us this week. And certainly, as we think about next week in our traffic patterns broadcast, we'll find some irregularities with the way that we travel in the cities and on the highways and how we can maybe remedy that. So once again, thank you for tuning in. That's all for this week. It's good seeing you return to this YouTube channel. Please continue to do so, and we'll see you next week.